Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything. Media Network. John Michael, founder and CEO. Reading a textbook cover to cover. This textbook. Published in 2001. This textbook, we're on Chapter 13, Section 3 today. On Friday, we were on Chapter 13, Section 2. In the spirit of the title, context being everything, I'm going to read a review that I wrote for Section 2 of Chapter 13, which was Friday. And here it is. The Mongols and Ming China. The Mongols were nomadic people who grazed their horses and sheep on the steppes of Central Asia. The River Mongol clans spent much of their time warring with one another. In the early 1200s, however, a brilliant Mongol chieftain united the warring tribes. This chieftain took the name Genghis Khan, meaning world emperor. His highly skilled armies conquered the Asian steppe lands with some ease, but as they turned on China, they faced the problems of attacking walled cities. Mongols and Chinese launched missiles against each other from metal tubes filled with gunpowder. This use of cannons in warfare would soon spread westward to Europe. Genghis Khan did not live to complete the conquest of China. His heirs did. For the next 150 years, the Mongols dominated much of Asia. Their furious assaults toppled empires and spread destruction from the southern Russia through Muslim lands in Middle East and China. The Mongols devastated the flourishing provinces of Sichuan and annihilated its capital city of Chengdu. Once conquest was complete, the Mongols were not oppressive rulers. Often they allowed conquered people to live much as they lived before, just paying regular tribute to the Mongol overlord. Although the Mongol warrior had no use for city life, he respected scholars, artists, and artisans. He listened to the ideas of Confucius, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, and Zoroasters. So the Mongolians were kind of open-minded after they murdered and set people on fire and flung them over the walled cities as a messaging tool. Burnt alive citizen of the walled city getting flung into the walled city is good messaging if you want to dominate a place in warfare. But after the domination, they seem to be pretty understanding. The Pax Mongolica lasted from 1200s to the 1300s, and this is a time of Mongolian peace, a name reminiscent of the Pax Romana, a time of Roman peace. According to a contemporary of the Khans, Mongol rule meant that people enjoyed such peace that a man might have journeyed from the land of sunrise to the land of sunset with a golden platter upon his head, without suffering the least violence from anyone. Meaning people wouldn't rob you on the streets even if you were wearing gold. Kublai Khan and the Yuan dynasty. Kublai Khan. Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, finally toppled the last Song emperor in 1279. From his capital in Kambulak, which is present-day Beijing, Kublai Khan ruled all of China as well as Korea, Tibet, and Vietnam. Kublai Khan tried to prevent the Mongols from being absorbed into Chinese civilization, as other conquerors of China had been. So he decreed that only Mongols could serve in the military. He also reserved the highest government jobs for Mongols or non-Chinese officials. Still, because there were too few Mongols to control the vast empire, Kublai allowed Chinese officials to continue their rule in the provinces. Kublai Khan adopted a Chinese name. He adopted a Chinese name for the dynasty, the Yuan, and turned Kambulak into a Chinese walled city. He also welcomed many foreigners into his court, including the African Muslim world traveler Ibn Battuta, Marco Polo. In 1271, Polo and his father and uncle left Venice and crossed Persia and Central Asia to China, where he spent 17 years in Kublai Khan's service. He described the royal palace of Kublai as being covered with gold and silver and decorated with pictures of dragons and birds and horsemen and various breeds of beasts and scenes of battle. Furthermore, he reported the walled city of Hangzhou was 10 or 12 times the size of Venice, one of Italy's richest cities. The Ming Dynasty restores Chinese rule. The Yuan Dynasty, Mongol Dynasty, declined after the death of Kublai Khan. Most Chinese disputed the foreign Mongol rulers. Heavy taxes, corruption, and natural disasters led to frequent uprisings. Finally, Zhu Yangzhang, a peasant leader, forged a rebel army that toppled the Mongols and pushed them back beyond the Great Wall. In 1386, Zhu Yangzhang founded a new Chinese dynasty, which was called the Ming, or Brilliant. The Ming restored the civil service system. Sorry. I hurt my back yesterday, and I don't think I slept quite as soundly as I would have liked. Not bad. Definitely not bad sleep. I slept. But a little tossing and turning. Well, not tossing and turning because it hurt to toss and turn, but whatever. The Ming restored civil service system, and Confucian learning again became the road to success. The civil service exams became more rigorous than ever. A board of censors watched over the bureaucracy, rooting out corruption and disloyalty. The fertile, well-irrigated plains of eastern China supported a population of more than 100 million. The Yang Valley peasants produced a huge rice crop. A huge rice crop. In the 1500s, new crops reached China from the Americas, especially corn and sweet potatoes. New technologies increased output in manufacturing, and better methods of printing led to the production of a flood of books. Ming artists developed their own style of landscape painting and created the brilliant blue and white porcelain pottery that we know today as chinaware and plates and all that. Ming performing arts developed a popular tradition in Chinese opera that combined music, dance, and drama. Between 1405 and 1433, Zhang He, the most famous Chinese explorer, led a fleet of 62 boats with over 25,000 with over 25,000 sailors to show local rulers the power and strength of the Middle Kingdom and collect tribute and expand trade. In 1433, when Zhang died, the emperor banned the building of seagoing ships for some mysterious reason. Okay, that's a review. Moving on. Chapter 13, Section 3. Korea and its traditions. Sorry, folks. I don't know if I slept too well. Korea and its traditions. For centuries, Korea survived in the shadows of powerful neighbors, China and Japan. Koreans thus came to see their lands as shrimp among whales. Yet Korea had another name, land of the morning calm. Whether tossed at turbulent seas or at rest in a calm land, Koreans had their own identity. As early as Han times, China extended its influence to Korea. Although Koreans absorbed many Chinese traditions, they maintained a separate and distinct culture. Geography of the Korean peninsula. Geography of the Korean peninsula. Korea is located on the peninsula that juts south from Asia mainland, with its tip pointing towards Japan. At the northern end of the peninsula, mountains and the Yalu River separate Korea from China. Mountains and seas. An early visitor once compared Korea's landscape to a sea in a heavy gale. Low but steep mountains covered nearly 70% of the Korean peninsula. The most important range is the Taebaek. It runs from the north to the south along the eastern coast, with smaller chains branching off from the hilly areas. The western coastal plains, Korea's major farming region. Okay, because farming was difficult in the mountains, most people lived along the western coastal plains, Korea's major farming region. Korea has a 5,400-mile coastline with hundreds of good harbors in addition. The offshore waters feature thousands of islands. Since the earliest times, Koreans have depended upon seafood for most of the protein in their diet. Today, South Korea has the third largest fish industry in the world. The impact of location. Korea's location on China's doorstep has played a key role in its development. From its powerful mainland neighbors, Korea received many cultural technologies and influences. At various times in history, China extended political control over the Korean peninsula. Wow, I'm out of it. Throughout its history, Korea has also served as a cultural bridge linking China and Japan. From earlier times, Koreans adapted to the transformation transformed Chinese tradition before passing them to the Japanese. Despite these strong ties, Korean language is not related to Chinese, and its earliest Koreans probably migrated eastward from Serbia and northern Manchuria during the Stone Age. Their own way of life was the first wave of Chinese influence. What? They evolved their own way of life before the first wave of Chinese influence reached the peninsula during the Han Dynasty. In 108 BC, the Han Emperor Wu Zhao invaded Korea and set up a military colony there. From this outpost, Confucian traditions and Chinese ideas about government From this outpost, which outpost? In 108 BC, the Han Emperor Wu Zhao invaded Korea and set up a military colony there. From this outpost, Confucian traditions and Chinese ideas about government, as well as Chinese writings and farming methods, spread to Korea. Korea united. Between about 300 AD and 600 AD, powerful local rulers forged three separate kingdoms: Koguryo in the south, and Paekche in the southwest, and Shilla in the southeast. Although they shared the same language and cultural background, the three kingdoms would often warred with one another or with China. Still, Chinese influence continued to arrive. Missionaries spread Mahayana Buddhism, as well as Still, Chinese influence continued to arrive. Missionaries spread Mahayana Buddhism, which took root among the rulers and nobles. Korean monks then traveled to China and India to learn more about Buddhism. They brought to learn more about Buddhism. What? This is brutal. I'm sorry. Whatever. It is what it is. If you're watching, thank you. If you're learning, God bless you. This is a learning experience for me as well. Missionaries spread Mahayana Buddhism, which took root among the rulers and nobles. Korean monks then traveled to China and India to learn more about Buddhism. They brought home the arts and learning of China. In 668, with the support of the Tang empress Wu Zhao and Shilla kingdom, united the Korean peninsula. Unlike China, Korea had only 3 dynasties in its history. The Shilla ruled from 668 to 918. The Koryo ruled from 918 to 1392. And the Choson Yi ruled from 1392 to 1910. That's a good run. Chinese influence. Under the Shilla dynasty, Korea became a tributary state, acknowledging Chinese overlordship, but preserving its independence over the centuries. Korea came to see its relationship to China in Confucian terms as its younger brother, who owed respect and loyalty to an older brother. Koreans also adapted to the Confucian emphasis of family as a foundation of the state. Confucian ideas affected the rights of women. Early on, Korean women had the right to inherit property. Some upper-class women held public roles. Over time, as Confucian views took root, women's rights became restricted. Women could no longer inherit property, and a woman's possessions within the family became more subordinate. At the same time, Koreans adapted the modified Chinese ideas. For example, they adapted the Chinese civil service examination to reflect their own system of inherited ranks. In China, even the peasant could win political influence by passing the exam. In Korea, only aristocrats were permitted to take the test. Buddhist influence. During the Koryo age, Buddhism reached its greatest influence in Korea. Korean scholars wrote histories and poems based on Chinese models, and artists created landscape paintings following Chinese principles. The Koryo dynasty built their capital at Choson, following the plan of the Tang capital at Chang'an. Koreans used woodblock painting from China to produce a flood of Buddhist text. Later, Korean inventors made movable metal type to print large numbers of books. Koreans improved on other Chinese innovations. They learned to make porcelain from China, but then perfected techniques of making celadon, a porcelain with an unusual blue-green glaze. I can't picture that. Korean celadon vases and jars were prized throughout Asia in the 1200s, and when the Mongols overran Korea, they destroyed many industries. The secret of celadon was lost forever. Weird. Choson, the longest dynasty. New heading. The Mongols occupied Korea until the 1350s. In 1392, in the brilliant Korean general Yi Song-gye Kye is how it's pronounced, I guess, set up the Choson dynasty. In the Song of the Flying Dragons, Koreans' leading poets helped Yi up as the model of virtue and wisdom for future rulers. When you have men at your beck and call, when you punish men and sentence them, remember my Lord, his mercy is temperance. If you are unaware of people's sorrow, heaven will abandon you. Remember my Lord, his labor and love. Yi reduced Buddhist influence and set up the government based upon Confucian principles. Within a few generations, Confucianism had made a deep impact on Korean life. The Korean alphabet. Despite Chinese influence, Korea preserved its distinct identity. In 1443, Korea's most celebrated ruler, King Sejong, decided to replace complex Chinese writing system the language of the lands, as he noted, is different from China's. Sejong had experts develop Hangul, an alphabet using symbols to represent the sounds of spoken Korean. Although Confucian scholars rejected Hangul as at the outset, its use quickly spread. Hangul was easier for Koreans to use than the thousands of characters written in Chinese. Its use led to an extremely high literacy rate, or percentage of people who could read and write. Japanese invasions of Korea. In the 1590s, an ambitious Japanese ruler decided to invade China by way of Korea. Japanese armies landed and for years looted and burned across the peninsula. To stop the invaders at sea, the Koreans, Admiral Yi Sun-shin, used metal-plated turtle boats. After 6 years, the Japanese army withdrew from Korea. As they left, however, they carried off many Korean artists and introduced their skills to Japan. As always, context is everything. And thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. And I hope I do too.